There are habits that age you faster than time itself. You won't see them in the mirror, but they weigh on your shoulders, wrinkle your spirit, and steal years from you without you even noticing. They're like a constant drip, wearing away at stone, silent, insidious, and most of the time, picked up out of habit or resignation. The uncomfortable truth is that many older people aren't aged by their gray hair or their wrinkles, but by the way they give in to discouragement, complaining, and rigidity. And worse still, no one tells them to their face. They stay quiet and watch as you slowly wither, but not today. Today I'm going to lay it out plainly. Stick with me, because we're going to expose 10 habits that are draining your vitality and respect, and more importantly, I'll show you how to break free from them. The last lesson will be the toughest, but also the most liberating if you're willing to face yourself honestly. I'm Gabriel, and this is The Stoic Garden. Pay close attention, because what you'll learn today might just change the way you face every day you have left to live. Let's begin. Tell me, how much of your day do you spend complaining? I'm not talking about the occasional comment in passing. I mean that constant, almost automatic litany that follows you while you watch the news, while you talk to your kids, while you stare out the window at the world. Have you noticed it? Because if you haven't, let me hit you with an uncomfortable truth. Every complaint that slips out doesn't just sour your surroundings, it wears down your soul. It's not age that's bending your back, it's the weight of your own words. Today we're starting with this first habit, maybe the most common and the most poisonous, living in a state of constant complaint. And I'm not saying this from some pedestal, as if I've never fallen into that trap. I myself dragged that chain around for years without realizing it. Until I understood that behind every complaint lies something deeper, a silent surrender, a way of saying, there's nothing I can change. That's the trap. Complaining seems harmless, but it's the symptom of a mind that's given up control and forgotten its own power. Think of a plant that withers because it's fed drops of poison instead of water every day. That's exactly what happens to your mind when you choose to nourish constant dissatisfaction. And this is where Stoic wisdom steps in. The same lesson Marcus Aurelius repeated like a shield against misery. You can't control what happens outside of you, but you can always control how you respond. Yet complaining is the automatic response of someone who's thrown in the towel, of someone who no longer believes they can even influence their own mood. I once met a woman named Mary. She was 72, and she confessed something to me that I've never forgotten. She said, "Gabriel, I wake up and the first thing I do is complain about the pain in my leg, about the weather, about my kids not calling, about how food doesn't taste the same. And by the time night comes, I feel like I've spent the whole day dragging around my bad mood." She believed life had treated her unfairly, but listening to her, I realized the poison wasn't coming from the outside. It came from within, from every word she let slip without noticing. So I asked her something simple. What would happen if, for one whole day, you chose not to complain even once? Not to change the circumstances, not to deny your pain, but simply to hold back the complaint and observe. She looked at me like I'd asked her to climb a mountain. But she tried it. And when we met again weeks later, she told me, "I never realized how much silence I'd lost in my own thoughts. I saw that life was still hard, but I no longer wasted energy fighting against it." That's what I want you to start noticing. There's no dignity in complaining. No one respects you more because you complain louder. In fact, let me put it even more bluntly. Complaining exhausts the people around you, isolates you, and makes you seem older, weaker, smaller. But if you choose to observe your thoughts before letting that complaint out, if you choose to bite your tongue and respond with calm instead of bitterness, something shifts. You become the master of yourself. And this isn't about denying pain, injustice, or hardship. It's about not handing over your voice to them, not letting them dictate every conversation, every encounter, every thought. Christ himself, in his worst suffering, didn't fall into easy complaint. He endured in silence, with his gaze set beyond immediate pain. Shouldn't we, who still breathe freely, be capable of doing the same? So today, I invite you to look within. Ask yourself honestly, are you letting complaints steal your years, your respect, your peace? Because if you are, this is the first habit you need to tear out by the roots. And believe me, you won't just feel the change in your mood, you'll see it reflected in the eyes of those around you. Let's keep going, because what's coming next will challenge you even more. This is just the beginning. Constant complaining is just the surface. If you dig a little deeper, you'll find something even more troubling: resignation disguised as neglect. Because it's not enough to silence the complaints, you also need to take an honest look at how you're treating yourself, at the signals you're sending to the world. And that brings us to the second habit that makes you age before your time: letting yourself go out of resignation. We've reached the second key point of this video, and it might not be one you want to hear. Many people, once they reach a certain age, let their guard down and tell themselves, "Why bother getting ready? Who am I doing it for?" They let their hair go unkempt, wear the same clothes over and over without a thought. Their posture slumps, their expressions harden, and suddenly, without realizing it, they're not just carrying the weight of their natural years, they're carrying the visible burden of having given up on themselves. Don't confuse this neglect with humility. There's nothing spiritual about being disheveled, and it's not wisdom to disregard your body and your appearance. In many cases, it's a sign that you've bought into a dangerous lie, that how you look no longer matters because your time has already passed. That belief is toxic. It doesn't just affect how you look, it shapes how you feel. And worse, it influences how others treat you. The image you project tells the world whether you still respect yourself, whether you're still present, whether your life still has purpose. Think about this. Every morning you leave the house without paying attention to yourself, without giving yourself 5 minutes in front of the mirror, you're sending a silent message, not just to others, but to your own mind. You're saying, "I'm no longer a priority." And when you get used to that message, it slowly becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You start behaving like someone who expects nothing new, who believes they have nothing left to offer. Seneca spoke of the importance of external composure, not out of vanity, but because it reflects inner order. Taking care of yourself isn't superficial, it's an act of self-respect. When you get up, shower, choose clean clothes, comb your hair with care, you're not doing it for others, you're doing it for you. You're telling your mind, "I'm still here, I'm still in charge." And believe me, that attitude is contagious. People respond differently when they see someone who takes care of themselves, who hasn't let their guard down. I remember a man I met at a talk years ago, John, 75, widowed, retired. He told me with a hint of sadness, "Gabriel, I used to care about how I looked. Now who for?" I asked him if he wasn't enough reason. He looked at me, at first in disbelief, but then he understood. He started small. Every Sunday, he ironed a shirt and wore it, even if no one was coming over. Before long, that little habit became part of his daily routine. Something shifted in his eyes, in the way he spoke. And it's not that time reversed, but he stopped carrying around the shadow of neglect. It's important you understand, your body and appearance aren't just wrapping. They're a visible extension of your will, your discipline, your self-respect. And when you choose to ignore them, you're sending a message to the universe. I'm giving up. But when you take care of them, even in small ways, you're affirming that you're still the lead character in your life. Even from a spiritual perspective, aren't we called living temples, as Scripture says? And how do you treat a temple? With neglect? With indifference? Of course not. You keep it clean, orderly, dignified, not to impress others, but to honor what it represents. So next time you think it doesn't matter how you look, stop. Ask yourself if you're not giving up on yourself before your time. Because as long as you're still breathing, your presence deserves respect, and that begins with you. What's coming next will challenge you even more, because the next mistake doesn't just affect your image, it shapes how you relate to the generations coming after you. And that's where many people start to lose respect without even realizing it. Stick around, because this is just getting started. So far, we've seen how constant complaining and personal neglect become invisible chains that drain your vitality and make you seem older than you are. But now, we need to face something even deeper. We've reached the third point of this video, and this is where things start to shift, because it touches on a sensitive nerve, constantly criticizing the younger generation. That attitude, which many adopt without even realizing it, is one of the most corrosive habits, not just for your relationships, but for your spirit. Or you might not notice it, but every time you speak with disdain or contempt about younger people, their habits, their ideas, their way of living, you're actually building a wall that doesn't just separate you from them, but isolates you from life itself. Because criticizing the young is, at its core, a way of clinging to the past and refusing to accept that the world keeps turning, whether or not you agree with how it's turning. Why does this happen? From a Stoic perspective, the answer is clear. Everything in life changes, everything flows, everything is fleeting. The problem isn't change, it's our resistance to accepting it. When you lock yourself into constant criticism, you're fighting against the current, wasting your energy in a battle you can't win. Marcus Aurelius said that adapting to the nature of things is the key to inner peace, and that nature includes the passing of generations, the evolution of customs, even the things you don't understand or agree with. The cost of criticizing the young is high. Not only do you feel increasingly disconnected, they also sense that judgment and pull away. I've heard many parents and grandparents lament that their children or grandchildren don't visit, don't spend time with them. But rarely do they stop to ask if maybe it's because of that constant disapproval they radiate, even without words, in every gesture, in every comment. Criticism, no matter how harmless it seems, has an invisible edge. It cuts off connections, chills relationships, and makes you irrelevant in their eyes. So what can you do to change this? Here's a practical and powerful strategy. Replace criticism with curiosity. The next time a young person says or does something you don't understand, instead of reacting with judgment, ask yourself, what's behind this? What world are they seeing that I might not be able to see? You don't need to agree, you just need to open the door to understanding. Curiosity is the antidote to isolation. It works because it disarms mental rigidity, keeps you connected to the present, and makes you someone who's willing to keep learning, even at 70, 80, or 90 years old. Think of it this way: a river that stagnates, rots, but a river that flows, that embraces every stone and every bend, stays alive. That's your mind and your heart. Criticism hardens, withers, ages. Curiosity, on the other hand, keeps you fresh, flexible, and relevant. And it's not just for others, it's for you. Because when you choose to observe with interest instead of judgment, you regain the ability to be surprised, to stay mentally young. Before we continue, I want to invite you, if this video is making you reflect, to subscribe right now and hit like. That way, I can keep creating content that speaks directly to people like you who want to live with purpose and dignity. And tell me in the comments, from which country are you watching? Plus, I want to read your affirmation. Leave this in the comments. I choose curiosity over judgment. let's make it clear that we're here to grow, not to stagnate. There are still important lessons ahead, and I'll tell you now, the last one will be the most revealing. Let's keep going. In the last chapter, I talked to you about criticizing the younger generation, how that attitude disconnects you not just from them, but also from the present and from yourself. But the disconnection doesn't stop there. There's something even more silent, more day-to-day, that contributes just as much, if not more, to the premature aging we've been talking about. It's time to address the fourth key point in this video: eating without awareness, as if your body no longer mattered. And here, I want you to pay close attention, because this mistake isn't always obvious. No one wakes up one morning and says, "Today, I'm going to neglect my body on purpose." No, it happens quietly, almost without you noticing. You get used to eating whatever's at hand, skipping meals, or on the other extreme, stuffing yourself with whatever's in the pantry without asking if it's actually nourishing you. The mental trap is dangerous. You tell yourself that at your age, it no longer matters what you eat, that your body's already worn down and there's no point worrying about the details. What for? What difference could it possibly make now? But that mindset is pure poison. Because when you stop paying attention to what you're putting into your body, deep down, you're sending a clear message. You've stopped valuing yourself. You've let go of the reins. And it doesn't matter if it's a plate of food, a cigarette, too much sugar, or alcohol. Every choice you make about what you consume is also a silent statement about how much you respect your life and your dignity. In Stoicism, the body is seen as an instrument, not an idol to be worshipped, but neither something disposable. Epictetus taught that we should care for the body as long as it doesn't interfere with virtue. And what's the virtue here? Temperance, self-control, clarity of mind. But when you eat without awareness, without moderation, without gratitude, your body becomes an obstacle. You feel heavy, sluggish, irritable. And the body, which should serve you, turns into a burden. Some people might say, "Gabriel, at this age, you've got to indulge a little, not watch yourself all the time." And I'm not against enjoyment, quite the opposite. But true enjoyment comes from awareness, not indifference. Eating whatever, out of habit, out of anxiety, out of boredom, that's a way to numb yourself, not to enjoy. And the consequences are twofold. It affects your physical health, more aches, more pains, less mobility, and it affects your mental health too, because a neglected body drags the mind down with it. It's a vicious cycle. The worse you feel, the worse you treat yourself. The worse you treat yourself, the older you feel and appear. I've seen far too many older people caught in this cycle without realizing it. People who, at 60 or 70, could still have energy, lightness, presence, but they've resigned themselves to the idea that it's no longer worth caring about what they eat. And in doing so, they also give up on projects, relationships, new experiences. Because when the body hurts, everything hurts. When the body's overloaded, the mind slows down. And what started as a simple oversight in the kitchen becomes the silent cause of their fatigue, irritability, and spiritual disconnection. Looking deeper, it's also about gratitude. Shouldn't we treat the body God gave us as a gift, not a burden? Every piece of food we choose is a way of either honoring that gift or disregarding it. And I'm not talking about strict diets or living with absurd restrictions. I'm talking about awareness, about sitting down at the table and asking yourself, is this nourishing me, respecting me, caring for me? If the answer is no, then you know you're falling into a trap that ages not just your body, but your spirit. So today I invite you to take an honest look at your relationship with food. Ask yourself if you're feeding your vitality or your resignation, because I promise you this, no matter how old you are, you can still reclaim your strength, lightness, and clarity. But it all starts with what you choose to put on your plate, and more importantly, the attitude you bring to that choice. And in the next point, we're going to dive into something that strikes even deeper: what you're doing with your time and how, without realizing it, you might be letting the past become the only main character in your life. Stay with me, because this is where many people start to lose themselves without even knowing it. We've reached the fifth point in this video, and this is where many people, without realizing it, begin to drag around invisible chains, talking only about the past as if the present were empty. It's one of the most common mistakes and also one of the most destructive. How many times have you caught yourself telling the same stories from 30 or 40 years ago over and over? How many gatherings turn into a parade of old anecdotes while the present sits in silence as if there were nothing left worth talking about? Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with honoring memories, with revisiting moments that shaped your life. But when the past is the only thing filling your conversations, your thoughts, your days, you've become a shadow of yourself. The past is a place to learn from, not to live in. Yet too many older people make it their only home, and in doing so, they start to age not just their bodies, but also their souls. Why does this happen? Because the past is comfortable. There's no uncertainty there, no risk, no chance of failure. But that comfort is the very thing that dulls you, dims you, and more importantly, makes you irrelevant to the present. It's hard to admit, but here's the truth. No one wants to hear the same stories forever. And when you settle into them, you start to lose the respect and attention of those around you, even if no one tells you outright. Your children, your grandchildren, your friends, they slowly disconnect. Not because they don't love you, but because they see that you've stopped living in the here and now. Staying trapped in this habit has real, devastating consequences. You miss out on opportunities to create new memories, and you feed the belief that there's nothing left to discover. It's a vicious cycle. The more you talk about yesterday, the less you live today, and the less you live today, the more it feels like all you have is yesterday. That's how frustration takes root, how dependence grows, how respect, both yours and others, starts to fade. You become a museum of yourself, and over time, that museum becomes lonely, dusty, and quiet. But this isn't irreversible. No matter how old you are, you can break free from that pattern. It won't happen with magic formulas or empty speeches. The key is shifting your perspective, reclaiming responsibility for your time. You need to understand that each day is still a blank page. The past might be a beautiful prologue, but the story isn't over yet. It's up to you whether you want to keep writing or just keep rereading. Stoicism teaches us to live fully in the present, knowing that the past no longer belongs to us and the future isn't promised. The only thing you truly have is this moment. So ask yourself, what are you doing with it? Are you creating something, learning something, connecting with someone, or have you become an echo of who you used to be? Reversing this requires courage. It requires accepting that even though the world changes, even though your body may not respond the way it once did, your ability to live fully has no expiration date. And living fully doesn't mean traveling the world or chasing grand achievements. It means being awake, right here, right now, open to new conversations, new ideas, even new ways to surprise yourself. It means that tomorrow you might have a new story to tell, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you chose not to abandon the present. If you feel like you've been stuck too long in the same memories, stop. Today's the day to change the narrative. Because if you keep looking only backward, you'll miss the only thing you really have, this moment. And believe me, there are still plenty of pages left to write, if you're willing to pick up the pen again. What's coming next will show you just how easy it is to stay tied to people and situations that quietly drain the life out of you. Don't go anywhere. It only gets deeper from here. In the previous chapter, I urged you to stop living trapped in the past, to wake up to the present before it slips through your fingers. But there's something just as serious, maybe even harder to recognize, that also ages the soul and binds you without you noticing. We've now reached the 6th point in this video, and I won't sugarcoat it: surrounding yourself with toxic people out of fear of being alone. I want you to picture this. Visualize yourself sitting in a room, surrounded by voices that don't truly hear you, faces only looking for what they can take from you, conversations that always end in complaints, demands, or manipulation. There's no gratitude, no genuine support, just a cold exchange where you keep giving and end up drained. Now ask yourself, honestly, how many of these people are still in your life simply because you're afraid of being left with no one? How many times have you swallowed hurtful comments, unreasonable favors, indifference, just to avoid feeling isolated? Let me tell you something maybe no one's had the courage to say. That kind of company isn't company. It's a prison without bars, where the punishment doesn't come from the outside, but from yourself. Every time you accept relationships that wear you down because you're afraid to face your own solitude. The trap is subtle. You tell yourself it's better to have someone, even if that someone drains you, than to have no one at all. You convince yourself that at your age, it's too late to cut ties, that it would be selfish to set boundaries. But every time you do, you give away a piece of your peace, your dignity, your time. And worse yet, you feed that emotional exhaustion that over the years turns into frustration, chronic fatigue, and a bitter sense that life owes you something. And as long as you stay stuck in that dynamic, the respect of others fades too. Because the hard truth is this: people can sense when you don't value yourself. And if you allow yourself to be used, diminished, manipulated, sooner or later, you'll be treated as dispensable, like a presence kept around out of obligation. Now I want you to imagine the opposite. Picture yourself creating space, cutting off those dead branches, even if at first it feels like you're left alone. Picture the silence. Not a heavy silence, but one that belongs to you. That's where you start making room for genuine relationships, for people who come to you not for what you give, but for who you are. And though it might feel empty at first, that space is sacred, because that's where you regain your energy, your identity, your clarity. Stoicism teaches us that it's better to be alone than poorly accompanied. Seneca said it bluntly: the wise prefer their own company over surrounding themselves with those who corrupt them. And I'll go further. Even from a place of faith, we understand this. Christ himself sought solitude, withdrew from the crowds to reconnect with himself and with the Father. How could you not have the same right, even the same responsibility, to do the same? If you persist in keeping people around who drain you, don't be surprised when life feels heavier, when every day starts with a weight you can't quite name. That weight comes from there, from not having the courage to let go. But you can still change it. I won't promise it'll be easy. I won't promise it'll be instant. But I can promise you this: it's the first step toward an old age marked by respect, dignity, and true inner peace. And in the next chapter, we'll explore how one simple but radical shift in your mindset can give you back the energy and vitality you thought you'd lost. Stick around, because we're not done shaking off those old ideas yet. Everything we've talked about so far points in one clear direction: taking back control, uprooting those habits that, little by little, have drained your vitality and your self-respect. I spoke to you about the importance of letting go of toxic relationships, even if it hurts. But cutting out what drains you isn't enough if, deep down, you're still feeding ideas and attitudes that wither you. Now we've arrived at the 7th point in this video, and it might be the hardest one to accept: believing that learning is no longer for you. This is, without a doubt, one of the most dangerous and silent traps. And worse yet, it's the perfect excuse. I'm too old for that, you tell yourself. What's the point? That's for younger people. But let me say it plainly, without sugarcoating. Every time you think like that, you're digging your own grave while still alive. Because when you stop learning, when you decide it's no longer worth discovering, exploring, making mistakes, what you're really saying is that you've given up on truly living, even if you're still breathing. I want you to pause for a moment and honestly look at how that mindset creeps into your daily life. How many times have you refused to try something new because you're afraid of looking clumsy? How many times have you avoided asking questions, signing up, getting involved, just because you think it's too late? That voice in your head isn't wisdom. It's resignation disguised as maturity. And every time you listen to it, you shrink, you become more predictable, more old. Stoicism never taught that learning has an expiration date. Marcus Aurelius, well into his old age, was still writing, still observing, still questioning, because he understood that as long as there's breath in your lungs, there's room to grow. And let me tell you something else. Not learning, not exploring, is also a lack of gratitude. Because if you're still here, if life has granted you one more day, who are you to decide there's nothing more to receive or contribute? The consequences of falling into this trap are obvious. Your mind dulls. Your conversations become repetitive. Your world shrinks. And worst of all, your self-esteem quietly crumbles, because deep down, you know you're not making the most of what you still have. What kind of message do you think you're sending to your children, your grandchildren, to yourself, when you choose to stay stuck in what's familiar, what's comfortable, what's safe? You become a passive spectator, someone who's just letting the days go by. But you're not condemned to that. Transformation is possible, yes, but only if you take responsibility for making the first move. No one's coming to shake you out of it. No one's going to force you. It's up to you to break free from that lie that it's not for me anymore. Today, tomorrow, any day you choose, you can learn something new, something small if you want, but something that brings back that spark, that pulls you out of the monotony. Stop looking for excuses. You're not too old to grow. You're too old to keep putting off what will make you feel alive. And this is where the line is drawn between those who age with dignity and those who simply give up. So what will you choose? Because time keeps moving, and the decision, whether it hurts or not, has always been in your hands. I've told you before, it's not enough to want to learn, to want to change, if you're still dragging around old ideas that keep you chained. In the previous chapter, it became clear that mental resignation is the prelude to a sad, empty old age. But it's not just your mind that gets poisoned by that passivity. Your actions, your way of relating to the world, do too. Now we've reached the 8th point of this video, and it's time to speak plainly about another habit that ages you without you noticing, clinging to control and refusing to delegate. Have you noticed how, as the years go by, many people feel a growing need to control everything, from how things should be done around the house to how others should behave? You think no one will do it as well as you, that everything has to pass through your hands, your eyes, your approval. But what you don't see is that this obsession with control doesn't just exhaust you, it traps you. It turns you into a prisoner of a heavy, rigid routine, leaving no room for lightness or trust. And that constant burden, believe me, is another thing that ages you. The problem is that control gives a false sense of security. You feel that as long as you oversee everything, nothing will fall apart. But that's a dangerous illusion, because life doesn't work like that. People don't work like that. Trying to manage it all is a sure recipe for frustration, mental rigidity, and fatigue. And it's not just your body paying the price. It's your mood, your ability to enjoy the moment, your connection with the people around you. This is where many fall into the trap without realizing it. They say they do it out of responsibility, even out of love. But underneath it all lies something else. Fear. Fear of letting go. Fear of things changing. Fear of becoming irrelevant. And as long as fear is running the show, you stay a slave to your own demands. The result? You become difficult, uncompromising, inflexible. People notice. Slowly, they start to step away, leaving you alone in your control tower while you burn yourself out trying to hold everything together. So what can you do now? The answer is uncomfortable but clear. Let go of something today. A task, a decision, an area you've always wanted to control. Delegate, even if it feels awkward at first. Allow others to do things their way, even if it's not exactly how you would do it. It's an act of faith, but also one of respect. Faith that the world won't fall apart without you behind every detail, and respect for your own peace of mind and for the autonomy of those around you. Stoicism is crystal clear on this. You don't control everything. You only control your mind, your attitude, your will. Trying to control more is fighting against reality itself, and that fight only has one outcome: exhaustion, aging, isolation. The mindset needed to release control isn't passivity. It's mature confidence. It's understanding that you don't need to prove anything to anyone by micromanaging every detail. Your worth isn't in how much you handle, it's in how much you can release without losing your calm. And don't expect this shift to happen just because you think about it once. It's a conscious, daily decision. Ask yourself every morning, what can I delegate today? What burden can I put down? Because until you make space, you'll stay trapped in the prison you've built yourself. The responsibility is yours alone. No one's coming to take that weight off you unless you choose to set it down. And there's still more to uncover. Because even if you start letting go, if you keep certain patterns in your day-to-day life, you'll continue aging faster than you realize. What's coming next touches on one of the most invisible, dangerous habits you've probably carried for years without noticing. Stay with me, because this is where many people unknowingly sink. We've reached a point in this video where there's no room left for sugarcoating. If you've kept listening up until now, it's because deep down you know something has to change. But this is where many people backtrack. They've understood the need to let go of control, to cut off draining relationships, to stop living in the past. And yet, they fall back into the same old excuses. That's why, in this 9th point, we're going straight to another silent habit that ages you without you even realizing it, refusing to change your routines even when they no longer serve you. There's no excuse more common than this. That's just how I am. I've always done it this way. You repeat it firmly, like it's a shield. But let me be blunt. That phrase isn't a declaration of identity, it's a sentence to stagnation. It's your mind's cleverest way of justifying inertia, of clinging to what's familiar, even if what's familiar is slowly dimming your light. How many times have you stuck to the same daily routine? Getting up, doing the exact same things, seeing the same people, talking about the same topics, and by the end of the day, you feel empty, frustrated, even irritated, but do absolutely nothing different. And then you tell yourself it's normal, that at this age, people don't change. That thought is an illusion, one that only exists to keep you comfortable and worn out. The real issue isn't that you have a routine. The issue is that you've become a slave to it, even though it no longer nourishes you, even though it weighs more than it gives. You've convinced yourself that changing it would be too much effort, that you don't have the energy for it anymore. But here's where the self-deception becomes clear. It's not a lack of energy, it's a lack of decision. Because comfort kills more dreams, more dignity than any external obstacle ever could. Every time you choose to keep doing the same thing, even though it no longer serves you, you're postponing your own life. And every day you postpone, you age a little more, not because of the passing years, but because of the opportunities you let die without even trying. Your routines aren't who you are. They're tools, and like any tool, if they no longer serve their purpose, you need to have the courage to replace them. Stoicism makes this clear. The only constant is change. Clinging to habits that no longer serve you is, at its core, going against the nature of life itself. It's trying to freeze life into a mold that no longer fits, but life doesn't stop. And you know what happens when you do? Time keeps moving, but without you playing any meaningful role. Today, I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. What part of your routine are you repeating simply because you always have, even though it no longer brings you joy, peace, or purpose? And more importantly, what story are you telling yourself to justify not changing it? Those stories are nothing more than excuses you've sold yourself to avoid discomfort. And as long as you keep buying them, you'll stay exactly where you are. There's no magic formula to break free from this. Only one thing: a decision. Ask yourself, what can I shift today, even if it's something small, to prove to myself that I'm still in charge of my life? Because until you take that step, you'll keep aging more on the inside than the outside. And trust me, what's coming next touches on the last and most dangerous habit, the one most people don't even notice. But that ends up dimming everything. Don't stop now. This isn't over yet. We've made it this far, dismantling one by one those habits that silently rob you of years, respect, and vitality. But I know what you're probably thinking right now. Maybe you're feeling that spark, the urge to change, to adjust those routines, to let go of relationships that weigh you down, to open yourself up to new experiences. But here's the real test. It's not just about deciding to change, it's about sticking with it. Because most people don't fail on the first attempt. They fail in the quiet relapse when after a few days, maybe a few weeks, they slip right back into the same old patterns. And that's where the 10th and final point of this video comes in. Constantly talking about illnesses and aches as if you were nothing more than a body. This is more dangerous than it seems. It's not just that the body ages, that's inevitable, it's part of nature. The real issue is that without realizing it, you turn every ache, every discomfort, every doctor's appointment into the central theme of your life. You define yourself by your ailments, and in doing so, your entire identity shrinks down to a list of medical complaints. And what happens when you define yourself that way? Everyone else starts to see you like that too, as nothing more than a worn-out body, a collection of limitations, a person who has nothing left to offer except conversations about their health. And the saddest part is, once you settle into that narrative, it's almost impossible to move forward. It won't matter how many changes you've made to your routine, your relationships, your mindset. If every conversation, every thought keeps circling back to your aches and pains, you'll always be stuck in the same place. That habit ages you faster than any real illness because it weakens not just your body, it weakens your spirit. So how do you avoid falling into this cycle? The strategy is brutally simple, but requires discipline. Decide today that your health will not be the centerpiece of your conversations or your identity. Make a promise to yourself that even if you have aches and pains, you won't let them take center stage in your life. This isn't about ignoring your problems or pretending to be stronger than you are. It's about refusing to let your body, with its limitations, define your worth. Marcus Aurelius, despite suffering from illnesses for years, never made them his banner, because he understood that as long as he could govern his mind, he was still the master of himself. That's the point. Physical pain might be there, but you decide whether it becomes the focus of your existence or whether you choose to center yourself on what you can still control: your attitude, your actions, your ability to contribute. This is where many people backslide. They change their habits for a while, start learning something new, improving their relationships, but then a pain, a discomfort, a diagnosis pulls them right back into that victim narrative. You can't afford that. Every time you fall back into that conversation, into that narrow focus, you're undoing all the work you've put in. So look yourself in the mirror and ask, do I want to be remembered as someone who spent their life talking about their ailments, or as someone who, despite them, chose to keep moving forward? Sticking with this change isn't about fleeting motivation. It's about commitment to yourself. You don't have to deny the reality of your body, but you do have to decide whether that's the only thing you represent. And let me tell you something else. The people who truly matter in your life will respect you even more when they see that, despite everything, you choose to talk about ideas, about projects, about faith, about what you still have left to give. Don't backslide, don't shrink behind your ailments. Because if there's one thing we've learned throughout this journey, it's that aging with dignity doesn't depend on the body, it depends on the spirit with which you choose to live each day. And that choice is yours. Now, always. If you've made it this far, let me tell you something straight. You're part of a minority. Not many people are willing to stay until the end, when the truths are delivered without sugarcoating, when the message offers no magic formulas or shallow comfort. Most prefer to turn off the video, get distracted, and slip back into their comfortable routines, even if those same routines are exactly what's dimming them day by day. But not you. You chose to listen, to reflect, and maybe to question yourself in a way few are willing to endure. I won't sweeten the reality for you. What you do after this is your responsibility. No one is coming to rescue you or push you. You alone hold the decision to keep dragging the habits that age you, or to start dismantling them today without any more excuses. I want those who are truly committed to this change to leave their mark in the comments. Write the phrase, "I refuse to grow old in surrender," and let me know from which country you're watching this video. That simple phrase isn't just decoration, it's a declaration. Because here in the Stoic Garden, we're not here to offer pretty words. This space exists to remind you, firmly and unapologetically, that your dignity, your peace, and your purpose remain in your hands until your very last day. I'm Gabriel, and my purpose is clear: to walk alongside those who choose to wake up, take control, and live with strength, no matter how many years they carry or how many scars they've earned. Now, if what you heard today resonated with you, if you know someone else who needs to be shaken by these truths, share this. And subscribe, not to boost a number, but to be part of a community that's no longer willing to live on autopilot. Here, we don't promise easy roads, but we do promise fellow fighters, people like you, ready to face their life head-on and reclaim it. This doesn't end here. On screen, I'm leaving you 2 more videos where we keep diving deeper into what it really means to live with autonomy and strength, no matter your age. Keep the conversation going, because every day you choose to act is a day won in favor of your own freedom. I'll see you there.